Welcome, 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 welcome.
Welcome, 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 welcome,
Welcome to the road.
This is Brian,
This is Constantine.
and we are
The
the
Rum.
Rum. Today we have Tiki royalty. We have
Indeed.
Rum royalty. We have Sven Kirsten. So minus all of our usual updates, we're going to get right into it. Sven, thanks
Hi.
for hanging out.
Thanks for having me. I'm looking at this amazing display of rums that I'm going to taste, and I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome.
Well,
So glad
and
you could
Sven,
be here.
yeah, I mean, just thanks for also just being patient with them, and both of us, Constantine and I, going through the collection, going, okay, but you got to try this one, and then you got to try that one, and you got to try this one too.
I'm going to start off with something that you represent.
Oh yes,
El Dorado, because that was, my introduction in rum came through Jeff Berry. And he basically said, Demerara rums, that is the Tiki rum. And that's how I started to like rum. And it's really, that's how I still like rum. I like rum that tastes rummy.
Rummy Rums.
Yes.
I love it. So what we are tasting here, Constantine, we'll all do this. This is the new high ester El Dorado rum. This is their LDI-DHE blend, a blend of two different stills. And
Wow.
it is fantastic. Ooh, see, Sven says, wow. Wow in a good way?
Yeah, in a good way. I'm glad I put some ice in it, though. It might be a sacrilege for the real rum crowd, but a lot of times, to me, it sort of opens up the rum.
Absolutely.
To put a piece of ice in
It really, really does. And so anybody that's going to give you grief, Sven, well,
it.
they're just silly.
Drink
But,
what you like, how you like.
Yep.
I'm guilty of snobbery too, because I, for the longest time I made fun of those big, big ice cubes that came into mixology and came into fashion, and I just thought it was kind of silly. But last year, this friend of mine, a British journalist, turned me on to this very simple drink that I like at home now. And it's, one of those ice cubes in a Mai Tai glass, and then you fill to the top of the ice cube with 3-year plantation white, and put coconut juice on it, and a dash of lime, and it's sublime. It's so simple,
Yeah.
Yep.
but it's really has a really rich taste. And before I was, for drinking at home, I made dark and stormies for speed
Yeah.
and taste. But now I switched to that. We call it Sventai now.
I think people might be disappointed, though, to hear that you're not making 7-ingredient tiki cocktails every time you have a drink at home.
Yeah.
Because
What's
I
up?
grew up with Jeff Berry being my neighbor. So he took care of the rum part and mixology part, and I did the art and design and architecture
Right.
part.
So you more had drinks served to you, and you did the art and the visual stuff.
He tested his recipes, and I was at Jeff Berry's
It's a
house
tough job.
testing, flights of his recipes.
Ooh,
That's
so
awesome.
how many times, what was the ratio of these are great or I never want to drink this again?
Oh, most of them were good. Most
Awesome.
Of them were good, yeah.
So you had it dialed in pretty
and,
good.
and he used to live just across the Silver Lake from me in a little side street that ironically was called Aloha Street.
Wow.
And then he moved away to New Orleans or somewhere else before Carolina or somewhere, and then to New Orleans, and that's it, unfortunately. But he was a guest author in my first book, the Book of Tiki. He wrote the chapter on mixology.
Okay.
Wow. And speaking of that, I mean, the Book of Tiki is kind of the beginning of the Renaissance, as I understand it, for Tiki. And the purpose of this episode for all of our lovely listeners is Constantine and I have become major rum obsessed lunatics through our love of Tiki. And we find the more people we talk to here, the more people kind of follow that same path. And so we have you and Jeff to really thank for that. And it started with the Book of Tiki, right?
Yes. Yes, the Tiki revival was really, it took me 8 years to find the right publisher for the Book of Tiki. I met Jeff in the early 90s, and we were both already into vintage Tiki, and it was like amazing to meet someone else who was into Tiki then,
Sure.
And then this small group of Tiki aficionados formed. We heard about Otto von Stroheim in Venice having Tiki mug parties, and Jeff and I were like, who's that guy? What does he know about Tiki? So we went to one of his parties, and that was the beginning. That's where we met Shag. He was friends with Shag, and that's how this whole little nucleus formed, which then very much helped to propel the Tiki revival too, because it was my book, but Jeff's recipe books covered that aspect of it. Otto had the talent of organizing events and started, before Tiki Oasis, we did all these small Tiki art shows and events in town. And then Josh became sort of the preeminent Tiki artist. And, it all started very small, and we would have never guessed that it would take off to this degree.
Do you think so? Now, where we are with Tiki, I mean, have we eclipsed where Tiki was in the golden era of Tiki, or is it sort of a different flavor?
It's totally a different flavor. It's still a very I wouldn't call it niche, but it's a specialty taste. And back then it was extremely popular all over America in all walks of life.
Sure.
So that's not going to come back, because this whole fascination with Polynesia and then Hawaii becoming a state and all these elements that came together, you can't redo that. But it's still amazing how deep it goes now.
Yeah. When you guys you said Jeff was your neighbor, but and it sounds like you guys met kind of by coincidence. Is that right? It wasn't, Tiki didn't bring you together. You sort of met and had a common interest.
I forgot. No, I think somebody told me about Jeff as someone who was also into Tiki.
Yeah.
And then Jeff was also friends with Bosco already. Bosco, the Tiki carver.
Yeah.
And one day, Bosco had been carving Tiki a little bit already in Tiki masks and stuff. We met, and he was like, I'm going to make a Tiki mug. And we were like, you can do that? Because we, we did was collect vintage Tiki mugs from restaurants. And that was part of the fun. They were like pottery shards from an ancient civilization. Because they had the names of restaurants on them that were long gone and that you didn't know existed. And so you could try to find out about them and look for them. And that was all before the internet. Now it's all so easy.
Sure.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you, is from some of our listeners today, and I ask myself this sometimes, how did you do anything before the internet? How did you guys, you were across the country and you managed to...
No, it was really, the nucleus was both of them. Jeff lived in Los Angeles. Otto still lived in Los Angeles. It was really, here in town. But then with Otto putting out the fanzine Tiki News, that got to record stores in other cities, and then other individuals joined the fold and found out what there's other people into this.
Yeah,
so cool.
And I want to just take a step back, Sven, because early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s, Tiki had been, I think, for the most part, a really forgotten thing, and
it was a black hole. There was nothing.
Sure.
When I started researching this, people were sometimes remembering like a dim dream, like it had disappeared without anybody noticing that it had disappeared, although it was very prevalent initially. But that's how these pop culture phenomena die. Sometimes it just sort of fizzles out.
Sure.
And people don't remember anymore.
Right. And what made you get so inspired to just write and get get into tiki? Did you go to tiki bars when you first moved?
Yes and no.
Okay.
I mean, Jeff and I started going to the Tiki tea in the late 80s or early 90s, and that's how Jeff honed in on finding out the recipes. But we sat at the bar and looked at all the stuff in the back bar, thinking like, oh man, that's such cool stuff.
Sure.
Never imagining that we would own 10 times more than ever can fit in that bar, But for me, it was the visuals. As a cinematographer, I'm a professional cameraman. It was always, I always say I'm a visual junkie, and I need new influx of stimuli, visual stimuli.
Mm-hmm.
And when I came across my first tiki carvings in Los Angeles, I was fascinated by it. And then I wanted to find out more, and I couldn't. And that somehow even egged me on more.
Mm-hmm. And even in the research, Sven, were you going to like libraries, or was it?
No, libraries, not so much. Used bookstores,
okay.
To find places like the apartment buildings, tiki apartment buildings. You would go and look for Hawaiian sounding names in yellow pages. And it was, flea markets,
sure,
thrift stores, when thrift stores would still yield cool stuff. But that was all before the internet.
I'd asked you earlier about the sort of the height of tiki and how big it was compared to what it is now. You mentioned just now tiki apartments. Can you tell us? I mean, what is this? It's might be hard for people to believe that there was a tiki themed apartment kind of
complex.
Yeah,
that was really a phenomenon of the heyday of tiki, which was actually very brief.
Mm.
And I have to clarify a little bit something here about my definition of tiki, which should be the definition of tiki, but it's not necessarily so, because now it's all what I call pre-tiki, which was the 30s and the 40s, and tiki, which was in the 50s and 60s. It's all lumped together into the big world of tiki.
Sure.
Especially just on the beachcomber being like the godfather of tiki, or he wasn't really tiki, because his bar was a tropical bamboo bar full of jetsam and flotsam from the seven seas, but tikis didn't play a predominant role. What fascinates me about tiki style is the fact that people use these pagan idols as decorations.
Sure.
I come from Europe, where you have in the larger cities, you have all these grand old buildings with Greek goddesses and gods and all this old statuary holding up buildings. And here was primitive art, which I had never seen before. And I think that's what makes tiki so unique and so special to America and to California, that use of strange idols as decoration and building supports in apartment buildings, for example.
Okay. And well, speaking on that is because there's now a debate going. I know the moderators of the Tiki channel on Reddit, and there's been ongoing debates on what makes a tiki bar, and some of it is how many tiki statues per square foot there is.
That's something that James Tilebone started in his books, and it's called the tipsy factor.
There's a formula.
Yeah, well, no, it's like the tipsy means like tiki's by square inch or something like that, And I support that, because my saying is, if it says tiki on it, it should have tiki in it, and meaning the image of a tiki, of tikis. And for a while, it's when the cocktail revival was at its peak. That was before COVID killed so many bars and so many jobs.
Yeah.
this whole new generation of, young craft cocktail slingers came along, and they didn't come from the art side like I did. They didn't come from the architecture and design side. They didn't. It wasn't really important to them. It was all about tiki equaled cocktails to them. In the bar lingo, then if you talk about tiki, they meant cocktails, and they left out this whole huge facet of mugs and carvings and decor and architecture. So, yeah, I support that take on it
For sure. In now, I'm gonna hard left turn. So rum and tiki. So with our lovely To the Rum podcast, I'm curious to know, just with your research, and I know Jeff was doing the cocktails and everything. Everything for the most part rum was the base spirit in tiki drinks,
right.
or rum rhapsodies, especially to start with. And so, curious to know why was rum used? Was it just readily available, or
that was, according to the lore of Don the Beachcomber, was that it was the cheapest stuff available right after Prohibition, or even during Prohibition. And so that's what he used. But of course, he had also, sailed the Pacific Islands and stuff. So he had gotten in contact with rum there.
sure?
I myself, I'm from Port Town, Hamburg, and a tiki bar to me is very similar to a sailor's bar in port towns, and we still have some of those in Hamburg that are, they're decorated with the jetsam and flotsam from the seven seas. Sailors came in and brought these little souvenirs,
Sure.
and shrunken heads and nautical items and stuff. And so, and rum was a sailor's drink.
Yep.
And in Hamburg, which has a really cold climate and wet and rainy all the time, it was more often used in the rum grog and with tea.
Yeah.
But in the tropical places, rum was certainly the preferred drink in the bar.
So, looking at your definition again, pre-tiki and tiki, with what was the crossover there? Was it Trader Vic that bridged those two into tiki, or?
No, Trader Vic made the
Spend the cork. You got to get the cork out. You haven't even been drinking.
Man.
I'm watching you do it.
Getting
Like,
started.
oh, because it's kind of blends in.
It blends
like
in.
Sure.
Yeah.
Spend your cutoff.
Okay, I'm trying this. You brought this out because I lamented the fact that dark rum is really hard to find. Good dark rum. This is a nice Gosling's Family Reserve. I'm thrilled to taste.
Yeah. So the story about this particular bottle, in the research that I do, because as we've been chatting, I'm a rum obsessed lunatic. Back in the day when Goslings first showed up on the island, they showed up there by accident, first and foremost. They became merchants, and they were selling, we got a whoa.
That's very medicinal.
It's a good woe or a bad woe?
No, it's good. It's dark. It's good. I used to fly through London to Germany, and the duty-free stores in the London airport always had, Heathrow had some great dark Demararas. The old Navy, or Navy, something with Navy.
Was it like Woods Navy rum?
Yeah,
or
Woods
Lamb?
Navy.
Yes.
Lambs, yeah. Great in these big bottles.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
always brought one of those.
My buddy has a few of those, and he refuses to open them. Like, just open. Let's enjoy it, huh? Well, back to the Goslings thing is, they were selling everything out of the barrel, and then around World War I, I'm not sure why or how, but they had a bunch of empty champagne bottles, and at that time, the Goslings blenders, the rum blenders, were collecting these bottles, putting their rum into it, pouring black wax over it, and then sealing it. And ever since then, it became known as Gosling's Black Seal Rum. So this old rum is a nod to how they used to bottle the rum.
That's why it's called seal. It doesn't have
Yeah.
anything to do with the animal.
The seal came like decades later.
That's funny.
Yeah, because
That's
it used to be
great.
people would always look for the Black Seal rum. in Bermuda. And then also like the Royal Navy, because there was a Navy base there, they would go after a lot of the rum as well. And then that's how Dark and Stormies kind of came to be. It was only a matter of time before, ginger beer, rum, match made in heaven.
Right.
But sorry to derail the conversation, but again, it's
no, I'm glad to have found out that is, it's not all my fault that I didn't see that the cork was on.
So we're back to that.
It looks like.
Oh, it does look like it's part of the bottle, yeah.
Like black wax.
So every time you reach for another, I'm going to say, Sven, the cork's still on. Oh, that's good.
Oh.
But so, and I mean, even just back to kind of the whole rum craze is, I think that the genius really of Don the Beachcomber, so many different things, but revolutionizing kind of split-based cocktails, the designs and everything like that. And so, Sven,
and blending rums.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I mean, is there a reason do you have any insight on how or what his decisions were on?
No, I'm not there's my friend Tim Lazar-Swanky now doing the book on him, or he finished the book now. He would be the person to ask. And also Jeff Berry himself was the one that did the initial Don the Beachcomber research. And in terms of mixology, like I said, I never got. I know how to make a mean Mai Tai for my guests at home, but that's about it.
A Sven Tai.
Oh,
that's a different one. Yes, got it.
Coconut water. The great thing is it's so readily available here.
Yeah,
it's like a real fad that happened with coconut water. I don't know. You probably don't have it. You have it in Fiji.
We do, but it's just on the tree.
Straight out of the
somebody brought that in recently. There's a brand, one of the stores started selling it, and everyone's like, that's never going to make it here because you can buy a coconut on the side of the road.
Right. But then again,
a couple $. And
you never know. These things are really strange how that happens.
Yeah.
Right.
In a country that has something on the tree that you find in a store, all of a sudden it becomes a rage.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, it's interesting to think about how coconuts in tiki drinks is sort of poo-pooed because it was always the concentrate and it was, the cocoa milk drinks.
Yeah. But
coconut water never came into play.
Yeah, and it's a very interesting thing because that's about as Caribbean kind of gets, right?
Yeah,
it's readily available there. Yeah, Pacific everywhere. And so, no, the things that really took the center stage were kind of, white grapefruit juice, falernum, which, are great in a lot of different ways.
Oh, that reminds me of the fact that not only in our little initial group, there was Jeff Berry, but it was also Ted Hay, Dr. Cocktail. He lived also across the lake from me, and he did all the deep, dive into pre-tiki cocktails.
Oh, okay.
He was like you went to his house and you opened all the kitchen cabinets and they were just full of old liquor bottles. The whole house smelled like an old liquor store. So you're lucky that this is new liquor.
Exactly.
But he was the one who found out about falernum and stuff. Then you couldn't get that stuff. It was all extinct. And that credit belongs to Ted Hay. Yeah,
and shifting gears again, Sven, I guess just why tiki? Like you.
Well, it just happened gradually that I saw my first tiki carving by this Filipino carver named Milan Guanco, that a roommate of mine brought home from a Filipino community market, and it was so elegant that I don't know if it doesn't happen that often now, but back then I was young and I saw something that I liked. I said, I want to have that.
That resonates with me so much.
So I kept on looking, and then I did discover this amazing store in the valley called Sea and Jungle, and it was the equivalent of the only other store than Oceanic Arts in Whittier that had rooms full of tropical decor and tiki decor. They had their own blacklight room,
Oh, wow.
blacklight
Very
paintings
cool.
and stuff.
Wow.
And I was going to the American Film Institute then. I didn't have any money, and so I could only buy a little thing here and a little thing there. But after going there 3 or 4 times, the next time I went, they had shut down. It was closed. And it was sort of, again, this experience of loss that made me look more, made me want to find out more. What, I was like, why could this cool store like this just close? Pack up and close, and what happened, and what was this? So I don't know. It was this natural inclination of the European explorer wanting to know more.
Yeah.
Sure. And so with the initial wave of Tiki kind of completely fizzling out, apart from a few remnants here and there, you, and I think it's very serendipitous too, that you and a bunch of like-minded people here in LA just happened to be in this place and helped just start to grow the category.
Right. LA is the center of entertainment worldwide, and has been. And, apart from Tiki bars being like the sailor's bar, also in my books, especially in Tiki Pop, I talk about how it's like a film set. And a lot of, that's how Don the Beachcomber started. He started renting out stuff that he brought back from his voyages in the Pacific to studios. And then they started hiring him as an advisor on South Seas movies.
Okay.
And his brother was friendly with the Hollywood set. And then the Hollywood celebrities started coming to his bar.
Yep.
And then, that started this whole thing. Life magazine did articles about it. Sunday Morning Post or Saturday Morning Post. Did this great spread. And it was just this, effect of one of the first effects of celebrity culture. When film stars frequent a place, other proprietors jump on the wagon, and that's what Trader Vic did, basically.
Yeah. Which it's pretty crazy. So that's, and I didn't necessarily make the connections. I knew like Ginger Rogers and Sinatra and all those guys and girls would go in there, but I never really thought that was the main catalyst which helped propel, which is kind of silly because that's how the daiquiri became so popular, because of Hemingway.
Right.
And then so On the Beachcomber opens, which is kind of crazy, the day after Prohibition ends. And then within a couple years' time, it just completely explodes all over the U.S. And so, has anything really taken the U.S. by storm? Because it lasted for a couple decades too.
Yeah. No, it was for several generations started, and that continued here too. For example, with the Trader Vic's in Beverly Hills, that was still going when they shut it down because some millionaire development guy, threw so much money at the hotel that they went for it, and it then never happened. But Trader Vic's in Beverly Hills was, people like Nicolas Cage and stuff went there because their parents had been going there.
Right. Yeah.
It's still the same with the Trader Vic's in Munich, which is one of the best preserved Trader Vic's at the Hotel Bayerischer Hof, in the basement. It's something for the upper crust of Munich. You used to go there and take their kids, and now the kids go there and keep it alive.
Which is amazing. And speaking of the aesthetics and beautiful designs, there's so many amazing bars. So I guess I have a 2-part question for you. What is, if you could only pick maybe one Tiki bar that has long closed that you never got to go to? Do you have one that you would have loved to get in the DeLorean with Doc Brown and hit it, Marty, and go back in time? Or
that's a tough question. There's several places, but it's how it's hard to put your finger on it. I was lucky to get to go to some great ones that have closed since then. I got to go to the Kahiki in Columbus, Ohio. I got to go into the closed down Chin Tiki in Detroit. after it had closed.
Mm.
The son of the owner let me in, and I got to photograph there. But off the top of my head, yeah, there's always things come up, and I could go there.
Sure.
I just recently saw this great signage for the Leilani in Wisconsin, which was a whole complex, a motel, Leilani Motel, and the restaurant, A-frame, and with these stone tikis that this German immigrant carver carved, and I have photographic evidence of that, of course, but yeah, that would be a place for example. But there's dozens. I mean,
Sure.
The Maikai, of course, everybody's waiting with bated breath for that to reopen. That's
Right.
probably the best and largest intact Tiki temple that's still around, and they're renovating it still, taking a long time.
And speaking of another Tiki temple, I don't know if the Kowloon in Boston.
Yeah,
Apparently that's closing down.
right.
So and I don't know if that is considered a Tiki temple, but it's
more a Chinese place with. I mean, it has this amazing Kowloon. The visual is amazing. There's this amazing A-frame, which was the other aspect of Tiki style that came up in the late 50s and especially in the early 60s, also with apartment buildings. When I used to go around the valley, drive around looking for Tiki apartment buildings, I always looked for tall palm trees, like islands in the urban sea, and
Sure.
A-frames, and I knew I had found something. The A-frame was a mid-century modern design element that just fit perfectly for Tiki, and the Kowloon has a giant A-frame with a giant Tiki outside. And then it has some nice murals inside, but it came sort of late in the Tiki trend when a lot of Chinese places went Tiki.
Okay.
And that happened more like with the Kowloon on the East Coast. And that's I'm not saying that's part of Tiki devolution, but a lot of times it was, a few Tiki trappings and Tiki cocktails on the menu, and not necessarily good ones.
Right.
And the Tiki, there was an article that someone just shared on Facebook, and it had a quote in there from Otto. And he said, in part of it, you're getting a guy's recreation of a memory. And he talked about the World War II veterans who came back from the Pacific, and then it was sort of an approximation of what they thought they remembered from a very short experience there. I mean, is that kind of how we got?
That has a little bit become of a cliche, in part my fault, because the initial book of Tiki description on Amazon it said something about the veterans returning from the Pacific, and in internet media, if you have something that sounds easy to explain something, it gets replicated again and again. And
you see that a lot.
You're a trendsetter.
well, but to the degree where I had to actually counteract that and show, a gruesome photo in my book Tiki Pop, where these Japanese soldiers with their heads shot off are lying on the beach, because it was only true to a certain degree, because a lot of veterans had some terrible experiences in the war.
The Pacific was awful.
And they didn't really want to talk about it.
Right.
So what happened, pre-Tiki and tropical bamboo bars in the Polynesian pop, what I call Polynesian pop, was already happening on the mainland before and during World War II.
Right.
And when the veterans came back, they didn't want to be reminded of all the
Everything
shit
that they went through. Yeah.
So they sort of chimed in.
Yeah, that makes more sense.
Sure.
But there were, on the other hand, there were lucky ones like James Michener, and that's why, he describes some things in this book that were horrible, but all that stuff was taken out for the musical and for the movie.
Yeah, the musical really is different from the book.
Yeah.
The book, I love that book. it was really sanitized. And
Yes, totally. It
musical.
was just made into entertainment.
Yeah,
you know?
almost a different
And
story.
that's what Tiki is. It's entertainment. Or what a friend of mine, I like to also call it edutainment, because it also it teaches people about Pacific cultures.
Yeah.
Even if it's in a cliche way often. But it's I always say that, out of 10 people that got into Tiki, there's at least one that got into contact with Pacific culture that didn't know anything about it before, and pursued it and learned more. And that's important.
And it's powerful, and edutation, I think, is or edutainment.
Yeah.
I think it's just spot on, because for me, in my own journey, the first tiki bar I ever went to, believe it or not, was Trader Sam's.
I believe it.
And
a lot of too.
And I never really kind of thought anything about. I always thought it was the Tiki Room, not knowing that the Tiki Room in Disneyland inspired Walt Disney because of the Tiki movement.
Right.
Found that out much later, but go in and the aesthetics of I'm in Hawaii right now. The LED screens or the volcanoes are erupting because someone got the Krakatoa. I didn't realize until talking to Adrian, good old Adrian, Polynesian Pop. I was like, oh yeah, they stole the animation ideas and drink reactions from Tiki Tea. So, of course, with the blood and sand, anytime somebody orders blood and sand at Tiki Tea, I make sure my face is on the bar yelling at the bowl. But for me, I think that I fell in love with Tiki just because of the aesthetics. You are transported to a tropical paradise, and then you have these amazing drinks. I downed 2 of them really quickly and then stood up and went, I'm going to sit right back down for a second.
Talk about amazing drinks. I'm going to try off.
Oh, yeah, the Worthy Park Calvados.
Yes.
And then from there, I started going to all the different places, Tonga Hut, Lono, RIP Lono. That was a casualty during COVID.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the tea. And even whenever I travel with my lovely Bridget, the first thing I'd always say is, well, where's the Tiki Bar? So 3 Dots and a Dash, for example. Or Sunken Harbor Club. So yeah, blame Sven. So actually Sven is a byproduct because I fell in love with rum through Tiki. So Sven, you're actually part responsible for the 600 bottles of rum that I have. So thanks for that.
Wow.
No problem. Wow.
This is my favorite so far.
Oh, and the Worthy Park Calvados.
Yeah.
So this is great. So Worthy Park, Sven and I both agree Worthy Park is an amazing distillery. This rum finished in Calvados. So this is actually not available. The distillery sent me this bottle. I had no idea what Calvados was until I got this. And I was like, oh, it's apple brandy.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's big in Germany. My brother used to drink it.
Yeah. This is great stuff. Speaking of which, I'm going to follow suit. And you took the cork off. That's good. Okay, I'm done. I promise.
Get out of the bottle.
But just back to the whole Tiki thing. I think it's the aesthetics that draw people in. It's the drinks that keep people coming back, and then it's the community. It's the same thing with Tiki Tea. Every Wednesday, you have the toast for Ray and everything, and it's been a really powerful movement. Did you ever think that it would get this this level?
Like I said, when Bosco suggested making Tiki mugs, Jeff and I were like, what? That there are now hundreds of mugs more than there ever were during the heyday of Tiki. That is just incredible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I guess when was the big turning points? Because everybody, you have this tight-knit group of people here in LA. There's the newsletter from Otto, and everybody is finding each other and getting connected. Was it just word of mouth and doing events that really?
No, it was really, I was a co-editor of Tiki News with Otto, and I've written articles for Tiki News and supplied material and stuff, but it was brown paper, a fanzine. And I wanted, I started working on a book of Tiki and had a proposal together and sent it to publishers, American publishers on the East Coast, because most of the publishers back then were still in New York and on the East Coast. And the response I got back was like, that's very interesting. What else is out there like that? And I'm like, it's a great thing that there's nothing else like it out there. I discovered something that nobody else did.
Yeah.
Don't you see that? And it was this. I knew that from film production. Producers want to play it safe. They want to know that something else has had success.
Sure.
And I still have Chronicle Books was in San Francisco, I still have this rejection letter from them. You know, the main editor said, "Yeah, I get what you're trying to do. It's a little bit much about one thing, and the younger members of my staff just didn't get it. You know, it was just too obscure." But I had offers from underground publishers like Research and stuff to do a book with it, but it would have been in black and white.
Sure.
It's Gustavo.
Oh, Gustavo
from Frogtown. And I knew it had to be in color. So the irony was that it ended up, me being German, it ended up being published by a German publisher, Taschen Books, in a full color book. And that really, not only also knew from film, it's not only that you put out a good product, but it's distribution.
Sure.
And Taschen, you know, was in all the bookstores worldwide. And that really, you know, propelled the whole thing because people for the first time saw it put into context. Nobody had ever put it into a whole context of all these different elements and the time period and stuff. And yeah, from then on, you know, it grew and grew.
Wow, that's wild. And now, so I mean, I'm just so curious to get your thoughts on is Tiki continuing to grow in your opinion? Do you see kind of the evolution of Tiki?
I think yeah, because there's always more now than ever maybe in America this need for escape.
Yeah,
escapism, and once people, you know, have their eyes open to that Tiki as an escape hatch, you know, they fall in love with it. And that's why new Tiki bars keep on opening. You know, some people fall by the wayside, you know, they're from the early generation, but there's always new people coming into the fold. My responsibility is to keep on educating people about what Tiki is, because with the internet, everybody thinks they know what Tiki is. And then if you dare to tell them that's not really Tiki, it's like they jump down your throat.
Yeah, how dare you? How dare you?
All right, so
gatekeeper.
Let's do this real quick, because there's a list in this article about what's Tiki and what's not Tiki. So I'm going to do a pop quiz, and we'll see how Sven does. Okay,
no pressure, Sven.
Tiki or not Tiki? Bamboo mugs.
Not Tiki.
Right? You're gonna keep track here?
Yes.
All right.
And Sven's prize, you get more rum.
Gilligan's Island.
That's a good question. I would say it is Tiki, yes, because it really propelled, you know, the whole aesthetic, and there were some Tiki episodes that were really funny.
Yeah. You know, my daughter's 8 years old and loves Gilligan's Island.
Oh,
she's watched every episode multiple times. So we have a future Tiki file, I think, up and coming. Okay. Let's see. Ceramic Tiki mugs.
Certainly
Tiki. That's right. $1,000 silk Aloha shirts.
No.
Dang, he's bad at 1,000.
Hawaii Five-0.
No.
Boom.
And Trader Vic's.
Yes.
Okay. Trader Sam.
Yes.
Uh-oh. This says not Tiki.
Well, no, but it's part of the Tiki revival. And like, you know, you said it's for many. I have to accept the places that are the gateway drug for Tiki. So,
right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that is interesting because now the gateway drug seems to be, I think, no more prevalent than.
Was that all?
Oh, there's more.
Oh yeah. Sorry. No. Yeah. We'll come back.
$8 cotton Tiki shirts from the 60s.
Yes.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
There's a couple more. Let's see. Charo's Supper Club in Kauai. That's a very specific one.
No.
This says it is, but it's closed long ago, apparently. Because I think this article was from the 90s. And so
that's it.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, it was a Tiki revival. No, wait a minute. Todd Rundgren opened one in Kauai. Is that the same one?
It's just Charos. I don't know.
No,
Charo's Supper Club.
And one more. Slack Key Guitar Festivals.
no, certainly not.
Boom.
So this differentiation here between Tiki, not Tiki, that gets back to what we talked about earlier, the art and the holistic.
No, but it also, Slack Key and Silk Hawaiian shirts. That's Hawaiiana. That's something from Hawaii.
Yeah.
And that's a very, wonderful pop culture too. But it is very quaint. It's also not unique in the sense because it's tourist culture.
Yeah.
There's tourist culture from Fiji. There's, all these
Absolutely.
things that people bring back from the islands, from tropical islands and stuff. That's not something unique. But Tiki is a specific U.S. mainland pop culture.
Yes.
It's what people on the mainland thought, proprietors thought the islands were like.
Right.
And that's what makes it so funny and so, which brings up the whole thing about, don't forget, guys, it's all supposed to be funny.
Yeah. Yeah, people get too
there's
serious
the
about it
humor in
sometimes.
this. It's so important.
There's certain people that just take themselves way too seriously.
Yeah.
And it is just kind of like the end of the day, we're wearing Hawaiian shirts and supposed to be having some fun little drinks and having a laugh. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So mainland U.S., Hawaii, and Pacific art is, carved by mainland carvers and designers and artists' renderings on menus and architects. That's what is Tiki. Yeah.
Constantine wants to have a Mai Tai break.
I think we should have a Mai Tai.
Yeah, okay.
Before we do that, I want another quiz.
Also, I can't pause this. So
Okay,
I'm gonna
we'll
have
just-
to-
we'll edit it
Yeah,
later.
we'll edit it in post.
I want to do another quiz, a Mai Tai quiz.
Yeah.
For your Mai Tai, what is in your spec for your Mai Tai? How many ounces of pineapple juice is a correct Mai Tai?
Oh, Jesus.
Oh, Jesus.
None.
I'll let you guys do it. Dang, I'll pour out all
I was put up to that. We were at where were we? Oldfields.
Oh, it's a bar in Culver City.
Uh-huh.
And yes,
and I asked them, there was some Tiki people there, and I said, okay, we're having this interview with Sven Kirsten tonight, and everyone's like, oh, Sven, oh, I can't believe you guys are talking to Sven. I said, okay, well, what we're talking to him, what do you want to know? What question should I ask? Every suggested question I got was, ask him if he prefers Rose's lime or the lime and the little plastic lime juice in his Mai Tai, or how much pineapple juice does he like in a Mai Tai? Not a serious question among them.
That's so funny. But that just goes to show how much it has become about cocktails now.
Right.
Which I'm not denouncing that because even in Tiki's heyday, the cocktails were the lifeblood of these places, and they are today because the profit margin on a Tiki cocktail is so huge. All the food and all the accoutrements and stuff is extra. But so it is important, but I'm also against a certain cocktailian snobbery now that there's, for example, a lot of people don't know about this, but there's a whole complete Tiki culture that developed in Spain and in Portugal in the 60s and 70s. And it was like the bottle from the movie The Gods Are Crazy, the Coke bottle that falls from a plane and the cult develops around it. It was its own thing. They had its own. They have over 200 mug designs that are completely different,
Unique to Portugal and Spain.
Yes, and the bars, because they had this Moorish tradition in Spain of tile work, of decorative tile works. They were all the tikis were made out of tile. Wow, it's amazing, and a lot of them in Barcelona. There's still 3 of them around, maybe, hopefully 3. But at some point, Spain alone had like over 200 tiki bars.
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, how did I get into Spanish tiki? I forgot. I must have.
Oh, we were just talking about what makes tiki, and not just the cocktails, but the artwork and everything.
Yeah. And now there's kids that go to these bars, and the cocktails are horrible in these bars.
Oh, yeah.
And they proclaim this is not a tiki bar.
Yeah.
And it's like, what? It's an amazing relic from the 1970s that has survived this long.
Yeah.
And it has this, amazingly unique concept in its design. And, it's so, ignorant.
So we talked about tiki being Americana, Portugal and Spain. I know I've been to Trader Vic's in Tokyo. I mean, any other countries where it sort of took off any more than just a niche bar here and there?
Not really, not in that way, because Trader Vic's of course was worldwide. It still is, but they were in Europe. In my hometown of Hamburg, there was one, and America is unique in its proximity to Hawaii. That had a big influence. I always say, like, why did France, for example, being close to Tahiti, not have its own tiki culture, and it's the fault of the French having too good taste. It really is.
Yeah.
Good taste. I have that quote by Picasso in the book of Tiki. Good taste is the enemy of creativeness.
Yeah.
You have that now. There's still all these, modern bars or modern restaurants that are so stark and basically just boring.
Yeah.
And then good taste has these crazy things like right now, the black buildings, black and gray painted buildings. In Southern California, where you have 300 days of sun,
right,
or used to have.
Yeah.
It's crazy, even in Palm Springs.
There's something about that era, too, about the 50s and 60s, where there was a lot more style, personal style in houses or in restaurants or whatever. I mean, I grew up, I was born in the 70s, and I caught the tail end of that in my grandparents' house, that still had that era where one room would be red and the next room would be green and then blue, and there was really you never have that today. Today it's white walls and it's
white
plain
and gray. And everything is so safe and nobody wants to offend, and that's where tiki comes in. That's why so many old punks got into tiki, because it was considered bad taste, and it had this kind of rebellious quality to it. And that's what some of the cultural appropriation generation doesn't understand. It was something rebellious. It wasn't something, looking down at other culture. Right?
Okay, so we are back after serving Mai Tais upon Constantine's request. And we've cheersed, and we are enjoying these now.
They're lovely.
Oh, yeah. But it really is quite remarkable. So, Sven, I actually have a question for you. And I asked this, I was in the desert oasis with Adrian, and I asked him this question. Do you know where Don got his inspiration from for the cocktails?
Like I said, I'm not the Don specialist.
Yeah.
I'm proud of having found the origin of another cocktail, the Dr. Funk.
Oh shit, that was you. That's right.
When I was reading about in this book by this American author, actually talking about Dr. Funk being a German doctor in German Samoa that was attending Robert Louis Stevenson. Attending to Robert Louis Stevenson, and he invented this drink with absinthe and brought it to this bar in Tahiti, and from Tahiti it then spread as funk. And in that way, it's perhaps the only true Polynesian cocktail in the tiki bar, because all of Don's inspirations came from the Caribbean.
Mostly. Right. And so, yeah, and I'll give you the cliff notes because I think that's amazing what a small world we're in. So it goes back to 1600s Indonesia. There's a bunch of Dutch merchants in Jakarta, which is modern day Java, Indonesia. Anyways, these Dutch merchants are drinking something called Batavia Arak Punch.
Right.
Batavia Arak is one of the oldest distilled spirits, sugarcane distilled. And punch because there were 5 ingredients. You had your Arak, you had your lemons, you had your sugar, you had your water for dilution, and your tea and spices.
Wait, what's punch? That's 5?
It's 5.
Means 5.
Because you have 5 ingredients.
Okay.
So age of discovery happens, people start getting into the Caribbean, and then it became 1 of sour, 2 of sweet, 3 of strong, 4 of weak. And it went through all these different iterations over the centuries. And this is all in Jeff's book, Potions of the Caribbean, which also helped me get more into being able to use different mixers for rum. Anyways, but so it gets to the Caribbean and it's all of that. And then Myers rum was specifically created for the Planter's Punch cocktail in 1878. And Myers rum did a rewrite in 1924, which was 1 of sweet, 2 of sour, 3 of weak, 4 of strong. And that was the proportions that Don Beach used the day that the Beachcomber opened. It's also why Planter's Punch was on his recipe. But now all of that was just, 2 ounces of whatever rum you had. But it is amazing that we're sitting here in a similar kind of capacity, enjoying a tiki drink with a link back to Dutch merchants in the 1600s.
I have to make it a compliment here. This is one of the unsweetest Mai Tais that I have tasted, and that's a compliment because a lot of times they're a little bit too sweet, and this is, it's just like, I don't know, the balance is just right.
So eat your heart out, tiki people. No, I think, Sven, here, let me pour you a little taste of the rum. I really do think that it's the rum that shines in this, because it's fairly punchy. It's a Jamaican rum. I'm only going to pour a tiny bit, and you want to...
That must be it, because I like I said, I like rummy rums.
Yep, I only gave you a teeny tiny bit. This is 51.4%, but it's pretty punchy. It has a lot of character, and I find that it really does create a really balanced, a really balanced Mai Tai.
It reminds me a little bit of why Martin Cade likes agricole rum for Mai Tai.
Yeah.
Because it also comes through there.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's the beauty of cocktails, is because, there's a million different ways that you can make a Mai Tai. All of them good, minus the pineapple juice and the dark rum floaters and everything like that.
Grenadine.
Grenadine. But thank you, Sven. I'm glad you like the Mai Tai. I was worried there.
The Mai Tai champion.
The Mai Tai champion.
I was reminded, talking about dark rum, and about another discovery I made in terms of rum was when that was in the 2000s, sometimes in the mid 2000s, and I visited the Mai Kai, and Kern showed me the back bar, where they stored all the rum on the shelves, and they had this liter bottle of dagger rum, of dark dagger rum up on the shelf.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, can I try that and stuff? And it was in a plastic container. It was in plastic. It was just like they started, batching that out to restaurants like that, not realizing that it was actually a very become extinct. So I got to take that home, and and that started everybody. That started Jeff Berry and everybody on a search for that. And my friend from what's his name? I can't remember. That did all the great lambs. He found some in a liquor. It was liquor store archaeology. You had to dig something that we used to do with Ted Hay and Jeff Berry, go to old liquor stores and go look up in the top shelves
Yep.
for the dusty bottles.
Yeah.
And find stuff that, you know, had become extinct.
Yeah, and it's funny you say that because I do that now.
Uh-huh.
I found a 1990s bottle of Mount Gay. It was sitting on a liquor store shelf in Winnetka, of all places.
Mm.
And you like it's a place that you very unnassuming on the outside. You go in, and I got 2 of these bottles, and they're from like one's from the
Nobody
late
drinks
80s.
rum there. So,
yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
so most of the time when you do those kind of searches, I'll say that you get real depressed because you go into some of those places and it's like the air is sucked out of the building and there's just like this really depressed sadness.
Yeah.
But it all makes up for it when you're able to find that one bottle of Mountain Dew or whatever.
Yeah.
But I can only imagine, especially back then when you were doing liquor store hunting and everything like that, of just finding everything. Because especially back then, nobody in the early 2000s, no one really thought much of Tiki. Mm-hmm. Everybody knew kind of at least what a Mai Tai, the concept of a Mai Tai, not a Mai Tai like the ones that we're drinking here. And especially when it came to rum too. So I can only imagine the treasures. Actually, I have an aesthetic question for Tiki. Why are so many tiki bars really, really dark? You know, you go into Tonga Hut, bamboo.
Don't tell me about Tonga Hut. That's, you know, I've been telling them, please just put some lights on those great tiki poles that are the dividers of their booths, because they came from the Playa del Rey Polynesian Village apart. These amazing Andres Bumatai designs, but they're black and they're in the dark tiki bar, so you don't see them.
It is something to where every time, because I do a decent amount with Tonga Hut too. Every time you go from the parking lot inside, I almost like hug the wall and be like, am I going to die? Am I going to fall? But were tiki bars always like that? I don't necessarily think.
Yeah, you know, it had to do with the escapism.
Sure.
And the whole effect of a tiki bar was entering a different dimension and a different reality. But unfortunately, yes. And to my, you know, frustration, when I started photographing tiki, apartment buildings were great because they were outside. Yeah. Like, you know, I got to shoot a lot of that. But for example, I went to Chicago to the Trader Vic's there in the basement of Benson? And I was still there, and I couldn't photograph it because as a lighting cameraman, I refused to use flashlights because it would destroy the atmosphere, you know. But it was so dark, and nowadays, you know, I just wish back then I would have had iPhones, because they see more than the human eye now, you know, almost. But back then, you had to shoot on film, and it didn't. There wasn't enough exposure, and so. We did these, you know, expeditions. Like me and Jeff went to Chicago and to Columbus, Ohio, to photograph the kahiki, and I rented some lights. And Jeff was my lighting assistant, helping to light the kahiki and the Konakai at the Marriott and the Hala kahiki in the River Grove outside of Chicago, and but I couldn't have photographed it without lights.
Are these places, any of these places still around that you mentioned?
Kahiki is unfortunately gone. The Konakai at the Marriott O'Hare is gone. But the Hala Kahiki is, and that's one of the most, I think, underappreciated time warps there, because it's like the Temple of Whitgo. The whole place is completely decked out with 1960s and 70s Whitgo carvings.
Sure.
And it's, you know, beautiful. The cocktails might not be up to par, but that doesn't matter to me.
Sure.
So everybody go and visit the Hala Kahiki.
And that's in
River Grove, out Illinois. It's just a suburb of Chicago.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Noted. Go see it, Tiki fans.
Well, so Sven, I mean, as we're kind of winding down, I'm just curious to know kind of, I know tomorrow you're going to be at Frogtown. You talked about the auction. So what's next for you? Congrats on the retirement, by the way.
Yeah, it's my retirement from cinematography, not from Tiki. Because as it goes with the middle class nowadays, all my money is in my house and that's being sold, and I can't take it all with me. So that's going, that part is going up for auction. But I have, just like next month, I have Exoticon on Saturday, Sunday, the first weekend of June, which is sort of the preparation for the auction. Then after Exoticon, I'm doing a slide presentation at the Adventurers Club, the Los Angeles Adventurers Club.
Awesome.
The weekend after that, I'm vending at the original Tiki Marketplace at the Elks in Garden Grove. And then the weekend after that is the auction. So that's that month. Then sometimes this fall, my next book is coming out that I put together with my friend Pete Maruzzi, who is the Palm Springs modernism, mid-century modernism authority. He founded the ModCom in Palm Springs, and it's going to be called Palm Springs Tiki. Polynesia in the desert.
Awesome.
All about the irony of building Polynesian paradises in the desert. And I wanted to call it Palm Springs Polynesia, but both Pete and the publisher said no, you have to, and I'm a victim of my own success.
Sure.
Because it has to have the name Tiki in it now, even though Palm Springs Polynesia is much cooler.
Yeah.
They said nobody knows.
Yeah. I think Tiki captures it all. And this is something I've thought about since I live in the islands now. And my wife is from Fiji, but she's Fijian, Tongan, Samoan, and she's mixed, all across the islands. And I see so much art in Tiki that is not just Polynesian, but Micronesian and Melanesian.
Yeah.
Some of the masks from Papua New Guinea, for example, and the Masi from Fiji. So I think Tiki really sort of, even though some people will get technical, we talked about that earlier, and on what the specific definition of the word Tiki is, but the cultural part of Tiki and the Americana of it, I think, captures all of the art from across the islands.
Definitely, yeah. It's the Polynesian Triangle alone has so many different versions of Pacific culture, and then you add Micronesia and Melanesia, and that all, it was really taken from all of these, Pacific Island cultures, and that's what makes it kind of complicated to explain to people that say like, oh, well, it's a melange of stuff. Why can't I put, Star Wars in there and stuff?
Yeah. Well, that was something to ask about. So, Sven, I guess we know the answer now, but there's this evolution of like horror Tiki and like Frankenstein mugs and all this stuff, and
Creature of the Black Lagoon. I love that film. I love Jack Arnold B movies, but it's a different genre.
Yeah.
Why people don't understand that if you just throw any pop culture phenomenon together in there, it dilutes the original, the uniqueness of the style. And it's usually laziness because they don't get deeply enough into really what Tiki is and can be.
Right. I wonder if what would you coin anything that's like, because you can't say spin-off Tiki, for example, but what would be like a good word for Tiki adjacent things? Because horror Tiki, for example, is not falling under the definition of Tiki. So would this just be like a different form of it?
Well, it's like, the question is this a Tiki mug? Well, the Tiki mug usually depicts a Tiki. A bamboo mug is, it looks like bamboo. A monster mug shows a monster,
Right.
It's like a hula girl mug. It's very simple, but no, everything has to be Tiki. And part of it is because I identified that in the book of Tiki in the beginning, that Tiki is such a buzzword. It sticks with you. It's like simple, and it's once people hear it, they can't forget it, and it's so overused now. And it started with eBay, everything being called Tiki there, and then people buy shit that's called Tiki, and you tell them it's not Tiki. It's like, well, but everybody on eBay says it's. And it's like, people are sheep,
Right.
You people are sheep.
How can you fall for that?
Oh.
Yeah, so it's like I said, I'm a victim of my own success. I have to call my book titles have to have Tiki in it now, even if I want something more sophisticated. But it's okay. It's gonna be a great book.
Well, that's awesome. And what's the best way for people to follow with what you're doing? Is it social
My
media?
Facebook page.
Okay.
I'm old school. I had an Instagram account with over 5,000 followers and thousands of images, and it got hacked.
Oh no.
And they don't care if that happens to you. They don't lift a finger to reinstate it or anything.
Yeah.
And it just took too much of my time to do both. And people tell me you can cross post and stuff, but I like the Facebook format because I can tell photo stories the way I like to in my books.
Yeah.
My books are basically like movies. I collect the images first, and then I string them up like a film, and so that they have a context to each other. And then I write the captions, and then I write the text. See, the other way around than usually books are written.
Right.
It's text first, and then illustrations.
So you mentioned the event coming up, the auction, and give it one more time just so the listeners can have it, the dates and location for that.
Dates and location.
Oh yeah. So Exoticon.
Exoticon is happening the weekend
8th and
9th
Yeah.
of June, and that's sort of the local LA festival.
And the Tonga Hut event on the 8th is already fully sold out. So
good.
get your tickets for the Mayan on the 9th.
That's going to be my roast.
Nice.
The Mayan is just this amazing. It's another one of my pet subjects. Is Mayan a revival style of the 1920s and 30s, and the fact that any building survives in Los Angeles from the 1920s is amazing. Yeah. But the Mayan theater is this incredible temple of Mayan revival, which is sort of a predecessor to Tiki, and it's used architectural idolatry as a design. Yeah. And inside and out, it's really amazing. So that's on the 9th. Yes. The auction is on the 29th and the 30th. And the first day we're going to be sitting at the Royal Hawaiian in Laguna Beach.
Awesome.
The auction.
Now, is this going to be a silent auction, or is it going to be rowdy where it's like, I want the mug, I want the mug.
No. It's but it's going to have an auctioneer that goes.
Okay. Hey, everybody! So we got this mug from that. Let's go. Let's go.
Exactly. That's how the Ocean Guards auction went. It was pretty exciting.
That's awesome. Well, Sven, you're the man. Thank you so much for dealing with our nonsense and drinking all the rum. Make sure that if you have Sven over, that you tell him to take the cork off. Last time, I promise. But really,
you're such a cork.
You're such a cork. But really, everybody, thank you so much for listening. And we don't have an episode lined up next, but we will announce that shortly. So, appreciate you, Sven. Appreciate you.
All right, thank you.
It was a pleasure.